Yo, what's going on guys? HyperX here. Welcome back to another video for Elden Ring, and today I want to put together 7 tips to become a parry god and dominate bosses. Parrying in this game, of course, is an incredibly important but often quite difficult thing, and 269 has been busy practicing, trying to learn how to up his parry game and basically parry more consistently. So we thought we'd share some of those learnings with you guys in the attempt that you want to try and become a parry god and basically parry more reliably, so you can then follow up with some of those badass riposte attacks. So if you guys do enjoy this, a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below if you guys have any more tips for yourself. If you guys are Soulsborne veterans and you have been parrying since the day you were born, definitely let us know in the comments down below, because of course we can always share those tips with the fellow Tarnished. But let us begin. First things first, before we even get started on the parrying front, you are going to need a shield, and you're also going to need a shield that has the ability to parry. Typically with an Ash of War, some shields will come with the parry ability baked in. There are different versions of the parry Ash of War. Sometimes you have like a golden parry, different things like that. But keep in mind, if your shield does not have the ability to parry, i.e. it's not listed as essentially an Ash of War, a weapon skill, then you can't parry. So that is of course going to be a prerequisite. You can actually buy the basic boy Parry Ash of War from a vendor located here, right at the start of the game. So if you do pick up a shield and you want to start parrying from the beginning, then go over here and buy this. Although it is worth noting, if you picked a starting class that has a shield, invariably most of those will have parry on them. But anyway, point is, have a shield that can parry. Now, moving on from there to a very important point number 2. Different shields have different active parry windows. If you guys play fighting games, maybe you're familiar with the concept of active frames, but let's keep things pretty simple. Smaller shields typically have bigger active frame parry windows when compared to, say, medium or larger shields, which effectively means, in simple terms, it is easier to land parries with smaller shields. So if you are a complete beginner and you are learning the ropes and you want to start mastering your parries, do not go and grab a massive shield, because you're actually going to make your life a hell of a lot harder. Sure, they might protect you, we're out here to become parry gods. In fact, if you want to go and get super analytical about this, SEBOY on Reddit did a fantastic post where we went through and basically tested different size shields and tried to put together a chart of the sort of startup and active frame windows. So if you want to check that out, I will link it down below. But for simple purposes, smaller shields are typically easier to parry with. And on that note, that of course leads us nicely onto point number 3, the buckler shield. The buckler shield is by far the easiest shield to get parries with in the game. And it comes with a unique Ash of War, buckler parry, which basically has a slightly faster startup time than the other small shields and a slightly longer parry window. So again, it basically just gives you a more generous window within which to land the parry, essentially allowing you to a degree, make a few mistakes, or at least have a slightly bigger window in which you might have read the move slightly too early and it might be a little more forgiving. So again, if you're trying to learn, the buckler shield is a fantastic option. If you want to get this one, there are actually 3 different ways to get this shield. First off, if you start as the bandit class during character creation, you're given this. Secondly, the gatekeeper Gostock, who you find at the very beginning of the game when you go to Stormveil Castle and he asks you if you want to open the door or take the secret passageway. If you kill him, you actually get his bell bearing, which you can then take to the Husk at the Round Table, open up their shop, and you can then buy the shield. And it's just worth noting, the reason we decided to kill him is because he's actually been siphoning our runes in Stormveil Castle. Have you guys ever noticed that if you're in Stormveil Castle and you die and you go back to get your runes, you actually get fewer runes back? That's because this guy is siphoning your runes in the castle, so he kind of had it coming to him. Alternatively, if you do go and complete his quest line, then upon doing so, you can also have him as a vendor, and you can then buy the shield. Either way, there's a few ways to get it. Now, when it comes to parrying, watch the hands of the enemies as opposed to the weapon, at least for the most part. While it might be tempting to think, okay cool, this enemy has a big ass blade, let me focus on their weapon, focus on when it's coming towards me, try and time my parry, and sometimes you get it wrong. However, if you are using a smaller shield, which of course gives you a much more generous window, it seems to be far more reliable if you instead focus on the hand of the enemy and react based on that position. Keep in mind again, if you're using larger shields with smaller parry windows, this won't always apply and you will need to focus on the weapon, but for learning purposes, small shield, looking at the hand of the enemy, has allowed us to reliably land parries back to back. What you're essentially looking for is rapid hand movement. So if you're observing them and you see the hand coming towards you, once it is moving, this is when you initiate the parry, the start of the forward swing. So for example, if the enemy swings their hand back firstly for like a wind up and then forward, the second you see that forward movement, parry. Do not mentally delay it, because that's often how you get clapped. You're like, all right, his hand is moving, let me wait a little bit longer and then I'm going to parry probably now, and then you get it wrong. No, the second you see that hand coming towards you, bam, parry. Typically doing that with a small shield should reliably result in a successful parry. In addition to this, as part of the learning process, think of it like training wheels for parrying. You can also hold guard and parry. If you want a fallback option, you can instead basically hold down guard and then hit parry from behind guard. This is a safer option because, of course, if you mess it up, you are still guarding, which of course means you are less likely to take damage. That's often something that scares people away from parrying because, of course, if you mess it up, invariably the punish is sometimes not worth it. But of course, if you do it from behind guard, then you do basically have a safety option. It's not quite as badass as doing a nicely timed parry followed up with a stab, but if you are on the learning process, think of this as the starting stepping stone. Additionally, it's worth noting that not all attacks can be parried. Now, of course, in this video, I do not have all the data of every single monster or every single enemy or every single move that can and cannot be parried, but it's worth noting that, of course, some moves, quite obviously, magic, huge explosions, crazy claws from dragons, different things like that invariably cannot be parried. Some of the more obvious ones, if an enemy is running towards you with a blade, trying to strike, and they have a nicely telegraphed move, of course you do have options to parry, but do keep in mind this is also sometimes a trial and error process. You will of course need to learn which moves do and do not parry, and then of course use those for your windows. I will of course say if there are any Soulsborne veterans in the comments that have the parry god knowledge that will of course want to share any tips on how you can determine when things can and cannot be parried, by all means share that in the comments down below. But otherwise, just keep in mind that while this is a useful tool, it is not something that can be used on every single enemy. And then finally, to round it all out, daggers do massive damage on the riposte. Because of course, one of the main things about parrying, one of the reasons you do it, apart from just looking like a badass, is so that you can then down the enemy, walk up, and then stab them for massive damage. And daggers are fantastic to pair with this because daggers do more damage on crit, and of course a riposte is a critical hit, so having a dagger in your offhand with your shield just means that you can of course follow up for some nice meaty damage for that final attack. So there you have it. There's a few handy tips, 7 tips on trying to become a parry god for those of you guys that want to learn it, to practice it, try and make it a little less daunting. Hopefully this video has helped you out. Hopefully it has given you some things to think about, to work on, to look for. If you guys have any more questions, by all means let me know in the comments down below. If you have any tips yourself, again, be sure to share them with your fellow Tarnished. And of course, if you haven't caught our most recent upload, be sure to click on this video and keep it locked on the channel for plenty more Elden Ring.